Once upon a time, there were two great kingdoms, Ikonte and Timbodi. Both kingdoms were known for their incredible wealth and prosperity. Their lands were full of fertile green farmlands, their towns had busy marketplaces, and their people lived in peace and happiness. One of the biggest celebrations between Ikonte and Timbodi was the Moonlight Festival. This annual event was a special time when both kingdoms came together to honor their friendship. Each year, people from both sides competed in dance and wrestling matches, showcasing their finest maidens and their strongest warriors. In Ikonte, there was a talented maiden named Enoima. She was famous for her incredible dance performances. She danced with such grace and elegance that everyone was mesmerized. Her performances were always the highlight of the Moonlight Festival. One year, a new warrior from Timbodi named Ikpebong arrived at the festival. He was young, strong, and very handsome. During the wrestling matches, he displayed his amazing strength and skill by winning many contests. Enoima watched him with great interest and admiration. When their eyes met, it was as if they could understand each other's heart. They felt an immediate and strong connection. Ikpebong was a humble farmer, but to Enoima, he was a vision of true love. Even though Prince Etoi from Ikonte was deeply in love with Enoima and wanted to marry her, Enoima's heart was drawn to Ikpebong. Prince Etoi was heartbroken when he discovered Enoima's feelings for Ikpebong. She didn't want the prince because the prince was rude and arrogant. The wedding between Enoima and Ikpebong was a grand and joyful event. The ceremony was filled with music, laughter, and dancing. People from both Ikonte and Timbodi came together to celebrate the union, showing the strength of the alliance between the two kingdoms. However, not all was as perfect as it seemed. In Timbodi, there was a long-standing land dispute between the powerful family of Ikpebong and another powerful family. This disagreement had led to many years of tension and fighting. One day, while Enoima was helping with the harvest at the farm, the other family involved in the dispute mistook her for a member of Ikpebong's family. In a tragic mistake, they attacked the farm and killed Enoima, not realizing who she was. Prince Etoi, on hearing of the tragic murder of his first love, was devastated. The news of Enoima's tragic death, caused by a dispute among families in her new home, struck the prince deeply. His heart ached with a desire for revenge, a fire that fueled him to lead an attack against the kingdom responsible for the tragedy. The kingdom of Ikonte, deeply distressed by the loss of their beloved maiden, demanded justice. They sent elders to Timbodi, asking for an exchange to make up for the tragedy that had befallen Enoima. The idea was that a fair trade would help heal the wounds and restore the balance between the two kingdoms. However, Timbodi's response was slow. They hoped that the issue would be forgotten with time and that things would go back to normal. This delay angered Ikonte. The prince of Ikonte, consumed by sorrow and anger, saw this as an opportunity for revenge. He planned to retaliate against Timbodi, seeking to balance the scales of justice with an eye for an eye. Ikonte decided to invade Timbodi to force the issue. This invasion was swift and powerful, a clear display of Ikonte's strength. The warriors stormed the compound of the family responsible for the tragic dispute. The maiden was taken from her home and taken to Ikonte. Her name was Utrefon, and she was now the sacrifice in exchange for revenge and a fragile peace. Utrefon's departure marked the beginning of a new chapter in the troubled relationship between Ikonte and Timbodi. The once strong bond between the kingdoms was now overshadowed by anger and sadness. Utrefon's family was shocked and devastated by this turn of events. They quickly went to their king to beg for mercy. They pleaded with him to intervene and prevent their daughter from being taken away. Despite their desperate pleas, the king of Timbodi was firm and unyielding. The king's decision was final, and there was no way to reverse it. When Utrefon arrived in Ikonte, people stared at her with pity and anger. She was brought to the palace where everything was beautiful. Despite being given a beautiful room, Utrefon felt lonely and out of place. She missed her home and family very much. She knew she was destined to be sacrificed in the evil forest, and this thought filled her with dread and fear. Utrefon's beauty and grace were undeniable, and she was introduced to the royal family. The prince, deeply scarred by the loss of his first true love, Enoima, and driven by the mixture of anger and duty, was assigned the task of escorting Utrefon to the evil forest. Utrefon began her duties in the royal palace, where she served the queen with dedication and grace. She learned the customs and tradition of Ikornte, slowly adapted to her new life. Despite her excellent service, she was treated as an outsider. The other servants shunned her. However, Utrefon's kindness and diligence slowly earned her the respect of those around her. Her inner strength began to shine through, though her heart remained heavy with grief. Prince Etoi, who was known for being very rude and arrogant, was in charge of Utrefon's fate. He was so harsh and distant towards her, struggling to show any kindness or understanding. His heart was hardened by the loss of his first love and the burden of revenge, using her as a symbol for his unresolved pain. She was a reminder of the love he had lost and the revenge he sought. His interactions with her was hostile. He lashed out every time, expressing his frustration through harsh words and actions, and he did not even try to hide his hatred for her. However, Utrefon's impact on Prince Etoi was profound. She was kind, intelligent, and wise beyond her years. Utrefon's gentle nature began to affect the prince. She sought ways to relieve the pain the bereaved family was facing. Prince Etoi, witnessing her contribution, began to see her in a new light. His hardened heart started to soften as he realized the depth of her character. The prince found himself drawn to her and would even send her on a lot of errands so she would be around him often. Prince Etoi's feelings for Utrefon began to deepen, but he struggled with the forbidden nature of their relationship and the memory of his late love, Enoima. His affection for Utrefon remained hidden, a secret burden he carried alone. The queen, who had always worried about whether Prince Etoi would be a good leader, saw Utrefon as someone who could gently support and guide him. Utrefon was making great impact on the prince, and the queen even began to see her not just as a captive, but as a trusted advisor. As time went by, Prince Etoi found himself very conflicted. He could not deny the growing love and respect he felt for Utrefon. Her resilience and intelligence began to pierce through the armor of hatred. Prince Etoi's attitude softened, and he became more thoughtful and considerate towards people, learning from Utrefon on how to lead with compassion and wisdom. The prince fought hard to suppress his developing affection for Utrefon. He was torn between his duty to uphold tradition and the love that was growing in his heart. He struggled with guilt, knowing that he was falling for the very person he was meant to sacrifice. The queen, who had grown fond of Utrefon and respected her greatly, began to advocate for her release. As the day of the sacrifice approached, the mood in the palace was sorrowful. Utrefon had captured everyone's heart. The queen, along with other women in the court, began to cry openly, pleading with the king and the elders of the royal household to spare Utrefon. Despite the emotional pleas, the king's decision was final: an eye for an eye. This is the great opportunity for us to send a strong message so that nobody will play with us anymore, the king said. On the morning of the sacrifice, Prince Etoi prepared for the journey to the evil forest. His heart was heavy with sadness and conflict. He could barely stand the thought of leading Utrefon to her death, especially after developing feelings for her. He tried to hide his emotions, but it was clear that he was struggling. Before they left, Prince Etoi and Utrefon shared a private moment. His emotions were painful. He couldn't speak, and Utrefon looked at him with understanding and sadness. She knew he was torn and appreciated his honesty and the struggle he faced. "I don't know what to do," he wept. "Maybe we should run away from the kingdom," he suggested to her. "It's okay. I understand that it is your duty and the sacrifice would restore peace between the kingdoms," she replied, her voice shaking with fear. "I will never let you destroy yourself and your kingdom by running away. If we run away, your kingdom will go to war and destroy my people?" She answered him. Right before midnight, the elders dressed in their ceremonial outfits, ready to march to the evil forest. The journey to the evil forest was marked by silence. Prince Etoi led Utrefon through the forest, accompanied by the king and the elders. Prince Etoi battled with his thought. His duty demanded he uphold the tradition, but his heart ached at the thought of losing Utrefon forever. As they reached the edge of the evil forest, the weight of this choice was a heavy burden on both him and Utrefon. It felt like a betrayal of their love and a crushing blow to Prince Etoi's heart. The ritual of the sacrifice was conducted. Utrefon had her hands and legs tied and laid on the shrine of the goddess. She had her eyes covered with cloth. The prince was ordered to take a knife from the shrine and put it through Utrefon's heart. His eyes were full of tears as he drove the knife through her heart, trying to be bold before the elders and the king. Utrefon's blood ran down the altar of the goddess. The prince and the elders turned around quietly and marched back to the kingdom. Overwhelmed with grief and the weight of his decisions, Prince Etoi fell into a deep despair. The act was supposed to avenge the kingdom and restore peace, but the kingdom was left in turmoil. The prince's inability to accept his actions made him spiral down with sorrows. After having lost both women he ever truly loved, Prince Etoi fell into deep depression, his health rapidly going down and his voice lost. He had not spoken a word since he left the evil forest. Months passed as the royal family made several sacrifices to the goddess of the land to restore the prince's health and voice. He became a shadow of himself, his heart heavy with the knowledge of his betrayal. The love he had for Utrefon was a constant reminder of his failure. After Utrefon was sacrificed to the goddess, something truly miraculous happened. Instead of meeting with a terrible fate, the goddess rejected the sacrifice. The goddess, who watched over the kingdom and its people, saw how kind and pure Utrefon's heart was. She had been observing Utrefon's selfless act of service and her sincere prayers for forgiveness from the evil act of her family. Even though everyone believed that Utrefon was lost forever, the goddess decided to help her. She appeared in a flash of light and magic, healing her wounds and giving her strength. Over the next few weeks, the goddess provided her with comfort and strength, allowing her to recover fully. Weeks later, when Utrefon was strong enough to go home, the goddess led her out of the forest and showed her the way back to the palace. As she approached the kingdom, the palace was filled with sadness and mourning. The prince and queen had been grieving her loss, feeling the weight of the tragedy that had unfolded. The prince had been bound to his bed for months due to deep sadness he felt for his betrayal. One bright morning, the palace guards saw Utrefon walking towards the palace entrance. They were stunned, not knowing if it was her ghost or really her, as no human sacrifice had ever come back alive. Some guards approached her with caution to make sure it really was Utrefon. They took her into the palace and informed the queen of her return. The queen, on seeing Utrefon, broke down in tears. She rushed over to hug her so tightly, thanking the goddess for bringing her back. "You are alive! How did you survive the evil forest? Why did the goddess spare you? She has never spared anyone," the queen questioned. "It was a long story, my queen. I will tell you later," Utrefon answered. "Where is my prince?" Utrefon asked. "He has been sick and hasn't said a word since he left the evil forest," the queen responded. Utrefon said, "Please take me to him." The queen took Utrefon to the prince's quarters. Utrefon moved closer to the bed and sat beside the prince. She held his hands very gently and put his hands on her wounded heart. She leaned in to call his name. "Prince Etoi, come back to me," she whispered. She waited patiently for a few minutes and the prince slowly opened his eyes. "Utrefon, is this really you?" the prince whispered, his voice weak and faint. "It's me, my prince." The queen was so overjoyed. The prince hasn't spoken since the day of the sacrifice, and it's been months. The prince, who had been heartbroken over the loss of his true love and the duty to carry out the sacrifice, was overwhelmed with joy and relief. He could not believe his eyes. His heart, which had been heavy with sadness and anger, was now filled with happiness and hope. Utrefon asked for some pepper soup. She fed the prince and gave him some water to drink. She nursed him back to health within a few weeks. The news of Utrefon's return from the land of the dead spread across the kingdom. The elders of the kingdom who had sacrificed Utrefon were amazed by the goddess's intervention. They saw her return as a sign of divine favor and a powerful reminder of the importance of compassion and understanding. The kingdom of Ikonte began to heal from the tragedy and celebrated Utrefon's return with great joy. The prince and queen decided to honor her by giving her a special place in the royal family. They treated her with great respect and love, recognizing her as a valuable and cherished member of their kingdom. They worked together to bring changes that abolished the practice of human sacrifice and created a more compassionate society. The kingdom sent a group of respected elders to Timbodi to apologize for the previous action and seek reconciliation. Prince Etoye and Utrefon's love continued to grow stronger. They decided to marry in a grand ceremony that was a true celebration of their union and renewed friendship between the kingdoms. The couple exchanged vows surrounded by their loved ones, and the reception was a joyful occasion. Under their rule, Ikonte thrived even more. Their reign was marked by wisdom and kindness. They made sure that their kingdom's resources were used wisely and that the people had opportunities to improve their lives. The story of Prince Etoye and Utrefon became a cherished tale in both kingdoms. It was a story of love, sacrifice, and the power of compassion, teaching the values of love and the power of a pure heart. What moral lessons did you get from this story? I hope you enjoyed the story. Please share it with your friends and family. And thank you so much for subscribing to my channel. See you in the next story. Bye.